The inspector's eyes lingered on the papers spread across the folding table. My brother shifted, sweat bleeding through his polo, while my parents nodded too quickly, too eagerly. Then the inspector looked up and said one question that cracked the air like a gunshot: "Whose degree is this under?" The silence that followed could have drowned me. My brother's jaw twitched. My parents' smiles froze. And then, like a spotlight snapping on in a dark theater, every gaze turned to me. My name is Claire Daniels. And from wherever you're watching this, stay with me. Have you ever been treated like a stranger in your own family? Like your very existence was just a tool, useful only until it wasn't? That's what this moment was. The inspector's question was simple, but behind it was an empire of lies my brother had built on my back. He'd used my degree, my name, my silence. I remembered the nights he'd come home bragging about the meal hustle. How he was pushing out trays of food like clockwork, 2,000 meals a week. My parents cheered him on, blind to the law he was breaking, blind to the fact that without me, his whole business would collapse. And me? I stayed silent. Because family was supposed to mean something. Because I thought protecting them meant protecting myself. But now, with the inspector's sharp gaze cutting through us all, I felt the trap snap shut. I could almost hear my heartbeat echoing inside that expo hall. My parents' proud faces faltered. My brother's bravado wilted. And suddenly, I wasn't their silent shield anymore. I was their liability, the weight of their betrayal pressed down like a knife to the chest. My own blood had written me into a lie I never consented to, and as the inspector waited for my answer, I realized something that made my skin crawl. They hadn't just stolen my degree. They had stolen my identity. The moment cracked open something raw inside me. A truth that had been buried under years of swallowing words. A storm that had waited, patient, in my bones. That storm was coming, and it would not be quiet. I didn't answer right away. My throat felt like it was stitched shut. The inspector's pen tapped against the clipboard, steady, expectant. My brother leaned toward me with a smile stretched so tight it looked like it might tear. "Tell him, Claire," he whispered through his teeth. "Tell him it's fine." But it wasn't fine. Not even close. I remembered the night he first asked for my help. His voice soft, persuasive, dripping with promises. "Just let me use your degree on the paperwork," he said. "It's nothing. Just red tape." Mom echoed him, "We're family. Don't be difficult." I wanted to believe them. So I signed the forms. I stayed quiet. I let them build a business on my name, and now, standing in front of the inspector at the biggest food expo in the state, I felt the walls of that decision closing in. I swallowed. My parents' faces were pleading now, eyes sharp with warning. My brother's hand dug into my arm, fingers cold and desperate. "Whose degree is this under?" The inspector asked again, slower this time. I looked down at the papers. My name in bold black ink. My degree. My license. Everything I had worked for, stolen and paraded as his. The truth burned on my tongue. But fear is a strange leash. It keeps you tethered to people who don't deserve you. So I said nothing. I nodded, barely, and the inspector scribbled something down. His eyes narrowed, like he knew more than he let on, but he moved to the next booth. Relief washed over my family like a tide. My brother slapped me on the back as if I were his partner, not his prisoner. "That's my sister," he said proudly. "Always has my back. Always." The word knifed into me, because what he didn't know, what none of them knew, was that silence has an expiration date. And mine was about to run out. That night, I lay awake replaying the moment. The inspector's question echoed in my skull. My brother's grip still burned on my arm. My parents' eyes, shiny with pride, but empty of love, haunted me, and I realized something bitter and clean: family doesn't mean loyalty. Sometimes, it means captivity, and I was done being captive. The storm inside me had a new shape now. Not just anger. Not just betrayal, revenge. Revenge doesn't arrive with fireworks. It seeps in, quiet as water through a crack, until one day the dam splits. That split happened 2 weeks later. I came home early from work, my scrubs still smelling faintly of bleach, exhaustion clinging to me. The garage door was open. Inside, I saw them, my brother and my parents, laughing as they stacked trays of food into a delivery van. My name was plastered across the side in glossy vinyl letters: Claire's Kitchen, Gourmet Meals, Trusted and Certified. My name. My degree. My stolen identity rolling through the city for everyone to see. I stood in the driveway, frozen, as my brother barked orders like some self-made general. My father was loading boxes. My mother was taking cash from a man in a pressed suit. I caught a glimpse of the bills, thousands of dollars, easy. It hit me then, they weren't just skimming off my silence. They were making a fortune. And not a penny of it belonged to me. Claire, my mom called, waving like I was a visitor, not her daughter. You're just in time to help. Her words gutted me. Just in time to help. That's all I'd ever been to them. I didn't move. I just watched as my brother strutted past, wiping sweat from his brow. We've got contracts lined up, sis, he said smugly. Big ones. This thing's exploding. You'll thank me when you're riding the wave with us. But I wasn't riding the wave. I was drowning under it. That night, I stood in front of the bathroom mirror, staring at my reflection until my eyes blurred. My degree hung on the wall behind me, framed, untouched, useless in my hands yet priceless in theirs, and I asked myself, how long do you let people steal from you before you steal something back? I started researching. Quietly. Patiently. Licensing laws. Health codes. The fines for fraud. The penalties for selling unregulated meals under someone else's credentials. Every word I read was a match in my bloodstream. I wasn't powerless. I was armed, and if my family thought I'd stay their silent shield forever, they hadn't been paying attention, because shields can break. And when they do, they turn into blades. Revenge is choreography. Every step must be deliberate, every glance rehearsed, every pause loaded. If you misstep, the whole act crumbles. So I became quiet. Quieter than before. At dinners, I let my brother gloat. I let my parents beam at his stories about expanding production. I let them dream aloud about franchises, food trucks, television spots. Every word they spoke was rope, and they didn't realize I was letting them weave their own noose. Meanwhile, I kept digging. I called the state licensing board, pretending to be a concerned professional. I asked about health certifications, liability coverage, the legal fallout if someone used credentials that weren't theirs. The answers were delicious: fines, lawsuits, even prison time. I printed copies of my license and compared them to the paperwork my brother had filed. He hadn't even bothered to forge well. My name stood there in plain sight, tethered to his sloppy signatures and falsified documents. One night, I opened his laptop when he left it charging in the kitchen. Password? My birthday. Of course. Inside, I found invoices, contracts, bulk food suppliers, even emails promising investors that Claire Daniels herself oversees every recipe. I didn't get angry. I smiled, because I finally saw the whole machine he had built on my back. And now, I knew exactly where to place the cracks. But revenge isn't only about paperwork and laws. It's about timing. About humiliation. About watching arrogance collapse under its own weight. The Expo had been a rehearsal. The inspector's question was just the first flicker of heat. I wanted a fire. A blaze that would leave nothing of their empire but ash and memory. So I set my plan in motion. I reached out to the inspector himself, the one who had looked at me with suspicion that day. I told him my story, calm, measured, with evidence attached. I gave him copies of the contracts, the invoices, the health code violations. I didn't beg him to act. I didn't need to. I simply gave him the truth and let the truth do what it does best, and then I waited. Waiting is the hardest part of revenge. It stretches every second into an eternity. But I savored it. Because with each passing day, I saw my brother climb higher on his stolen throne, never realizing the ground beneath him was hollow. The higher he rose, the harder he would fall, and I was going to make sure he fell in public. The inspector came back on a Tuesday. The kind of gray that makes everyone look guilty. He didn't call first. He didn't need to. He walked straight into our garage like he owned the place, clipboard underarm. Eyes scanning the vinyl sign with my name on it as if it were a crime scene photograph. My brother froze mid-sentence. A tray in his hands, sauce slopping at the edges. For a second he looked like a teenager who'd been caught shoplifting candy. My parents fumbled for excuses, licenses, certifications, contracts, words used like talismans. Hoping they would ward him off. He opened his binder and read aloud. Quiet and precise, like a judge delivering a verdict. You are operating under credentials not issued to you, he said. These invoices, this correspondence, this is falsification. I'm issuing a cease and desist and a violation notice. You have 72 hours to produce the rightful license holder or face fines up to $50,000 and criminal referral. The numbers landed like hammers. My brother's face flushed with a kind of fevered denial. My father's shoulders rounded, old bones folding in on themselves. My mother started to cry, soft at first, then ugly. Game tears that wanted sympathy rather than accountability, and the customers, there were always customers, crowded the driveway, curious, angry, phones out. Someone streamed the entire interaction live. Within hours, the clip had 10,000 views. Within a day, it had 100,000. Comments called him a fraud, calls to cancel orders flooded their line. Investors texted to pause discussions. The money they'd been sitting on looked like sea glass, pretty from a distance. Worthless in my hands. My brother lunged at the inspector like a cornered animal, shouting about misunderstanding, family name, legacy. The inspector stayed calm. "Where is Claire Daniels?" he asked. His voice cut through the chaos like a scalpel. I stepped forward because for once, the room wanted me to speak. I read from the stack of documents I'd printed, emails, falsified filings, supplier invoices with his forged signature. I watched my parents' eyes move from denial to recognition to horror. The man who'd called me sister now stared at me as if he'd been unmasked in a carnival mirror. When the inspector closed his binder, he did something small and human. He thanked me for coming forward. It felt like a verdict delivered in my bones. The van was impounded that week. Contracts were terminated. The investors demanded audits. The town gossip chewed them to bones. My brother called me a traitor. My mother called me a coward. My father stopped speaking at all, but nights are honest. In the quiet after the chaos, I counted the cost, friendship strained, family meals turned to staccato silences, my name broadcast to a city that now associated it with scandal. I had won the fight against the theft of my credentials. But the victory was jagged, edged with loss, and under that jagged light, I felt a new thing settle in my chest, not triumph, exactly, nor remorse. But a hollow clarity. I had taken back what was mine. And the world had watched me do it. The numbers landed like hammers. My brother's face flushed with a kind of fevered denial. My father's shoulders rounded, old bones folding in on themselves. My mother started to cry, soft at first, then ugly. Game tears that wanted sympathy rather than accountability, and the customers, there were always customers, crowded the driveway, curious, angry, phones out. Someone streamed the entire interaction live. Within hours, the clip had 10,000 views. Within a day, it had 100,000. Comments called him a fraud, calls to cancel orders flooded their line. Investors texted to pause discussions. The money they'd been sitting on looked like sea glass, pretty from a distance. Worthless in my hands. My brother lunged at the inspector like a cornered animal, shouting about misunderstanding, family name, legacy. The inspector stayed calm. "Where is Claire Daniels?" he asked. His voice cut through the chaos like a scalpel. I stepped forward because for once, the room wanted me to speak. I read from the stack of documents I'd printed, emails, falsified filings, supplier invoices with his forged signature. I watched my parents' eyes move from denial to recognition to horror. The man who'd called me sister now stared at me as if he'd been unmasked in a carnival mirror. When the inspector closed his binder, he did something small and human. He thanked me for coming forward. It felt like a verdict delivered in my bones. The van was impounded that week. Contracts were terminated. The investors demanded audits. The town gossip chewed them to bones. My brother called me a traitor. My mother called me a coward. My father stopped speaking at all, but nights are honest. In the quiet after the chaos, I counted the cost, friendship strained, family meals turned to staccato silences, my name broadcast to a city that now associated it with scandal. I had won the fight against the theft of my credentials. But the victory was jagged, edged with loss, and under that jagged light, I felt a new thing settle in my chest, not triumph, exactly, nor remorse. But a hollow clarity. I had taken back what was mine. And the world had watched me do it. Freedom didn't arrive like sunlight. It came like silence, the kind you notice only when the noise is gone. For months, I lived in that silence. No more knocks on my door. No more pleading phone calls. Just the echo of what my family had done, and the space they'd left behind, but silence has a way of amplifying the sounds you try to ignore. Whispers found me. From old neighbors, coworkers, even strangers online. They said my brother was spiraling. He'd sold his car. He'd been spotted drunk outside the shuttered garage where the van once sat, muttering about contracts and betrayal. One rumor said he'd tried launching another food hustle under a fake name, but inspectors shut it down within days. Failure clung to him like smoke. And my parents? They didn't fall in spectacular flames. They just withered. Mom stopped going to church, too ashamed to face the stairs. Dad spent hours in the yard, raking the same pile of leaves until his hands bled. Their pride, the thing they'd worshipped more than love, was gone. And without it, they were hollow shells in a house that smelled like dust. Part of me wanted to feel pity. Another part wanted to feel rage. But what I felt most was distance. Like I was watching a stage play from the back row, no longer part of the cast. Meanwhile, my life began to move. The hospital offered me a promotion, citing my integrity under pressure. I laughed when I read the letter. Integrity, funny how the world can recognize what your own family never did. Still, nights were heavy. I'd lie awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying the inspector's words, the crowd stares, my brother's hand gripping my arm. Betrayal is a wound that doesn't bleed, it festers. And even after justice, the scar throbs. One evening, I found an envelope under my door. No return address. Inside, a note scrawled in my brother's frantic handwriting: "You don't understand. You destroyed everything. They'll never forgive you. I'll never forgive you. But you'll remember me. Always. No signature. Just rage on paper. I burned it in the sink. Watched the ash scatter like the empire he'd built, and as the smoke curled into the air, I realized something I hadn't allowed myself to think until then: revenge isn't the end. It's the turning of a page, but the story wasn't finished, not until I gave it a title. The night of the Expo replayed in my dreams for months, the inspector's voice. The crowd's eyes, my brother's grip on my arm. But one night, the dream ended differently. This time, I spoke. I told the truth without flinching. And when I woke, I realized that dream wasn't fantasy. It was memory, because I had spoken. And speaking had saved me. The world moved on. Viral clips fade, gossip dries up, scandals become tomorrow's trivia. But scars stay. My brother never rebuilt. My parents never forgave. They looked at me like I'd burned down their house, when all I'd done was refuse to let them burn me. And maybe they were right. Maybe I had lit the match. But what they'll never understand is that some houses deserve to burn. I walked away with my name intact. My degree intact. My soul intact. And that was worth more than the ashes they tried to crown themselves with. Do you want to know the strangest part? The silence that used to chain me now feels like air. When people call my name at work, it's not tainted. It's mine again. One afternoon, a colleague asked me why I seemed so calm lately, why I carried myself like a woman who'd come through fire. I almost laughed. How do you explain betrayal so deep it remade you? How do you put words to the moment you realize family can be both prison and executioner? You don't. You give it a name. You give it a story. You leave it behind. This is mine. My parents helped my brother fake a meal business using my name, until the Expo inspector found out.